Hi, my name is Jay, and today I decided we're going to be making a character. Seems easy enough, it's what I do, but there's a catch. Every part of the design, from concept to outfits to accessories, will be 100% picked and chosen by Pinterest. So here's how this is going to work. When using Pinterest to decide what our character will be, we'll have 3 rules. Rule 1 is for picking the overall concept. For this, I can base my character on whatever shows up in the pins when I first open Pinterest, but strictly to get an idea on the type of character I want. Rule 2, for whatever else I need, like hair, outfit, accessories, I have to search up what I want and can only use the first pin that pops up as my reference. And rule 3, everything our character ends up being has to be based on a Pinterest suggestion. Am I ready to be told what to do by a website? No, but we're gonna get started anyway. Okay, I have opened a wonderful Opera GX tab, and we're just gonna open Pinterest full stop, and whatever comes up on the home screen is gonna be the base of our character overall. So let's see. Okay. I'm seeing some things. I'm seeing multiple things. Lots of Sims. I do come on here for Sims ideas. I'm looking a lot at like this section right here, and like with the claws and like the like kind of grungier fashion, and then like the deer and the old town diner. This is giving me very much like Midwest werewolf is what I'm getting from this little section right here. This jacket and these jars kind of read like Southern Gothic to me in a way. I'm seeing, yeah, like stuff like this. I think I'm grasping a boyish small town werewolf. Is this reading that to anybody else? Okay, I went ahead and made a board and I saved some of this stuff to, well, literally one pin, but I'm gonna save the rest of like my big inspirations here to that one board. So definitely these 4 pins. These are our pins as of right now. So very, once again, small town, maybe creature, wolf-esque, kind of grungy attire, maybe some Southern Gothic aspects. I do think that this is like a good base for what this character could potentially be. Now that we have that as reference, I'm gonna search up some things. Obviously, I've been really busy on Pinterest lately, but I think we're gonna start with some hair. So to get sort of the vibe that we want, I am gonna add in some sort of like words that are gonna go with it. So we're gonna search up like, so let's do like grungy, is there no E in that? Sure. Grungy hair. Grungy haircuts, because I feel like that's a little bit more gender neutral for Pinterest. Maybe it'll read as that. All right, this is the first one that came up, and I like what's going on here. I put a little section in the board so I can move whatever pins that Pinterest selected for us into that little folder. We have our hair. The next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try 2 different methods to get sort of like outfit inspiration. First, I'm gonna look up like grunge small town Midwest outfits and see if I can get like a collage of things to take ideas from. And if that doesn't really work out, then we'll do like separate articles of clothing. But let me do like grunge small town outfit. Small town grunge outfit, sure. Okay, this is giving us some things. I like this. I wish this was the first one, but this is technically the first one that pulled up. But I like this. I like the big sweater, and I like that these have like a bunch of holes and patches in it. It gives us opportunity to draw a backpack since Pinterest gave us one, and we could do like a graphic tee. I'm counting this as just a graphic tee and some docs. I actually think this is great. I can definitely do something with that. Okay, the next one, we technically got shoes, but I'm gonna look up shoes really quickly just to see if we can get like maybe something cooler like these. This was the first one that popped up. I definitely like these, and they look like the docs that were in the other photo. So Skechers, I did not know Skechers was making heat like this. Okay, now we have a base and a reference to go off of for the shoes now, so this is great. I'm gonna keep this same search up and look for accessories next. Okay, we're getting some things here. This is the first one that came up, and I did want to give this character some jewelry. So this is good that this came up. Okay, the last thing I want to do, I know that I want to make a werewolf character. So I'm just gonna kind of search in like maybe small town wolf. I'm trying to keep as many like buzzwords as possible. This is not, okay, that's not working, but let's just search up wolf. And the first one that comes up is what we'll base it off of. Okay. I mean, this is technically the first one. I think these colors are relatively similar, so I'm going to use this as a reference. Is that a little bit cheaty? I don't really care. Okay, For some reason, I like refused to speak while I was doing it. But then the last thing I looked up was small town tattoos. I love to give my characters tattoos. This is the first one that came up and it looks like coordinates. So I actually think that's super cool. And it gives me a lot of room to like maybe explore like more rural areas and maybe give this like actual coordinates and put it on my character. So I thank you, Pinterest, for giving me that. These are all of the pins we ended up with at the end. And these pins were officially all we could use to base our character on moving forward. Okay, it was time to start brainstorming what we picked out, or rather what Pinterest picked out for us, into an actual character design. So I put all of our pictures onto the canvas and wrote down what the big takeaways from them were, so it was fresh in my mind when I got started. We know this character is going to have a lot of grunge, Midwestern inspiration, they're going to be a creature or werewolf of some sort, and that we have to incorporate the hair, accessories, and outfit from the pins Pinterest recommended us. If you've watched any of my other character designing videos, this setup will probably look really familiar. When I first sit down to make a character, especially if we're starting from scratch, I always start with the face. I like to start here because I personally put a lot of details into how my characters' faces look. I think it's where most of their design really comes out. And since we're starting with nothing except for a few pins, I really needed to sit down and try to form who this character was going to be, just to try and kind of get to know this character a little bit and form them into something. It's especially important for this video since we're giving up some creative control by letting Pinterest steer our design. So starting with the face can help me come up with things like personality, maybe a little story for them, things like that Pinterest couldn't exactly give us. Now, as far as the face, I had a little bit of an idea of what I was going for once I sat down and got started. I knew going in that this character was going to be some sort of werewolf hybrid, so I gave them stronger features like a bigger, sharper jaw. At this point, I was having a lot of fun going in a more gender-neutral direction, so they got a mix of more prominent features mixed with less sharp ones. Things like a thicker neck and wider chin, but mixed with rounder cheekbones. I also added in the ears just to get a reference for them and tweak it a little bit. Looked a little cat-esque at first, but just walk with me, alright? Also, with the ear fluff I put at the bottom, I couldn't get the image of the Grateful Dead bears out of my mind, so the ears were fixed shortly. Let me break my entire setup while I talk too, that'd be cool. Realizing now that as soon as I opened Pinterest to get the inspo pins, my mind immediately leapt to how I could turn this challenge into me just getting to draw a werewolf. I'm a creature of habit, truly. At this point in the process, I was kind of throwing things onto the canvas to see if anything stuck, and trying to slowly build a character with the restraints of the challenge and building the character as we went before I did a little bit more research. So I played around with things that I had more control of, like face shape, the ears, and most of this came out in their eyes. I went back and forth with how they looked before deciding to make the lashes more downturned. I don't do this often, and I thought it would tie into finding that middle ground between stronger, sharper features and rounder ones. I also took most of my chances to create a character that was very much picked out by Pinterest, but still make them original and mine. And most of this translated to how the werewolf/creature aspect of the design was gonna look. So I made their neck look a little furry to test out how creature I really wanted them to look. We dive more into this later, but for now, this is where my head was at. I also gave them bigger teeth than I usually draw, just having fun making them look more pronounced and wolf fang-like. Now, I did take some minor creative liberties, okay? I will not be stopped. The Pinterest challenge cannot silence me. So I ended up giving her some gauges in her ears, which I think fits the pins we chose enough for me to get away with it. And the drawing was literally begging me to add them. Like, can you blame me? Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't think this character would have gauges. You can't. I took a few more liberties like this when it came to the ears as well, which is how we ended up with one of them being ripped at the top and the other one having a couple of cutouts in it. I was really starting to like grasp a character now, and I could tell I was getting more comfortable and getting more ideas around this point when I started adding the hair. I had taken sort of a shot in the dark with the earrings and the shredded ears, but when I added the hair, everything started to click into place a little bit more. The style that Pinterest gave us was a little choppy and teased up like some goth hairstyles that I see a lot, and it made my southern gothic loving heart happy that the hair tied into everything. And it was also one of our inspirations, so it all just kind of worked. I made it look a little messier but kept the same shape as the reference photo we were given, and it was the starting point to figuring out what this character's personality might be. With everything that we had so far, I started to picture this sort of rough and tumble werewolf character who was a little rugged to fit in with the design choices we picked for later, and this ended up turning into me adding different things that suited this direction, like thicker eyebrows and the grin that looks a little playful or mischievous. I just really wanted to rough up this character the more I got comfortable in drawing them. Now, the colors I chose were very based on the wolf picture Pinterest had given us for our reference. Lots of brown and tan tones. She was blonde for a second, but then I ended up darkening it into more of like a brownish because I thought it suited the character a little bit more. I also wanted to tie in the hair reference as much as I could and still make it suit the character's color palette, which is really what this entire video is gonna be, finding a good middle ground between references to stick to the challenge mixed with original ideas and inspiration as we go, which is what all character inspiration should end up being, in my opinion. This is a Pinterest Designs My Character challenge, but in the end I want it to look like a fully cohesive original design, even if I didn't get to choose all parts of the design myself. I ended up giving them some makeup on my own accord. There was makeup in my references, so I went with it. As I was drawing, I started aging this character around late teens. It just sort of popped into my head. And made sense with where I was pretty sure this character was gonna go as far as design and direction. And the messy eyeliner fit that idea to me and added more grunge aspects to it, which was one of our big inspirations. At this point, I'm sort of picturing them as like a lovable menace type of cryptid, very rough around the edges, but more in like a carefree teenage wolf way. Some of the last details I added were giving her Gage's little tree details, since I knew this character was probably gonna reside in a forest of sorts, so just a little tie back to that. And I made all of her other jewelry gold, since in traditional werewolf folklore, most retellings note that silver can weaken or harm werewolves, so I stuck with that just to make sure it like fully kept within like what most lore for these types of characters were, but also because for the character I was picturing especially, I don't think they'd be wearing anything that would purposely hinder them. And this is what brainstorming and making the face ended up looking like. It gave us a great base to continue the design and keep fleshing out the character. Alright, we're moving on to the next phase in this character design challenge. As much as I'd love to keep drawing faces all day, that's not all that a character is. So I started focusing on what their body type and build might be before I got started on anything outfit related. I was fully invested into the whole werewolf creature thing now, so they ended up with a hybrid type of body, or at least I tried to push the boundaries on it a little bit, and this formed into bigger feet especially and some bigger hands. I also knew I wanted more animal-like hind legs so I could push the wolf, not fully human thing a little bit more. It kind of took me back to the furry video I made a little while ago actually, and it took a minute to tweak everything and get it to look right. I even tried out longer arms, but I think I changed those. At this point I was honestly just doing everything in my power to make them look more creature-esque. It was what I was having the most fun with while I was drawing, mostly because if you've seen anything else from me, you know I love to draw a werewolf, mostly for my comic, but when I draw those werewolves, I have a list of rules I have to follow for why some of them look how they do, and they end up more on the human side of the hybrid spectrum. But for this character, I didn't have any of that to think about. So it was really fun to just push the boundary a little bit, and I was really happy with how their build ended up turning out. They ended up looking more like on the shorter side, and I thought about changing it to be more of an imposing type of frame, but I ended up really liking it. I considered that this character is gonna be young, so it made sense to me. And also the image of this normally huge beast in folklore being pretty short seemed like a cute detail to me. Speaking of, for this challenge where Pinterest is deciding our fate, making some of the design be out of my hands, I decided to really focus on researching things outside of the design so I could still flesh out a real character. I knew we were making a werewolf, and I knew we had some Midwestern inspiration, so I looked into some werewolf related myths or sightings that took place in the US, and I actually stumbled upon the perfect myth to base my character on. I did some searching and I found something called the Michigan Dogman, which if you don't know why I got so excited over this, I'll explain. First and foremost, I really wanted to find something that related to the Midwest in some way, something foresty and small town-esque since it was a big inspiration, and Michigan is right smack in the middle of what is considered the Midwest. There was real life werewolf lore from the Midwest that I could base this character on, and I had a ball, let me tell you. The Michigan Dogman, like the name suggests, is a piece of cryptid folklore from all the way in the 1880s when the first supposed sighting was recorded, taking place in Wexford County, Michigan. According to what I read, it allegedly appears every 10 years, only on ears that end in the number 7, and you can scare it away by clapping your hands really loudly. It was pretty unknown until late into the 20th century, where more reports stated that the creature was seen prowling around the Manistee River, which is located in Michigan. Manistee? No clue. Sorry to any Michiganders. And thank you so much Wikipedia for those little tidbits. Now that's all fun and exciting, but when I read this, I immediately started picturing the character we were making, a wolf-like hybrid cryptid stalking around the Midwest, and it was unbelievably perfect. So when I looked into that, their design started changing a little bit to fit that, really leaning into the cryptid thing and allowing me to have a lot more fun with the design, and I could let my mind wander a little bit to make the character feel more real. And I immediately slotted our character into basically just the Dogman lore. Alright, at this point it was time to move on to the outfit, which is where most of the pins were picked out to be our guidelines come in. I started with the shoes because I was actually pretty excited to draw them, which is crazy because I've stated many times that shoes are like one of the things I consider to be my artist kryptonite, but they get better as videos go on, I think. I obviously based the boots on the picture Pinterest gave us, but I decided that it would be cute to start adding crescent moon motifs to a couple of their things, like the patch on the front of the boots, just to really sell the whole werewolf thing. And I drew their shoes untied because I had known this character for about 2 hours at this point, and I already knew that this MF wouldn't be caught dead with tied shoelaces. After the boots, I sort of just started moving up the body, so I started adding those baggy jeans from our reference photo. I am so happy that Pinterest gave us something with patches because it fit the character I had been constructing so well at this point. One of the pant legs ended up getting rolled up because I didn't want to lose any of the anatomy on their legs. It was one of the things I liked the most in the design so far. It also would have made it so you couldn't see the shoes, and I wasn't going to cover up the very first good pair of shoes I've ever drawn, but I kept the other side still down and baggy to match the reference photo. I also added that belt from the photo, trying to stay as true to the challenge as I could, but I did take it upon myself to make the buckle look like a half moon, because literally why wouldn't I? And then I just went crazy style with the patches. Honestly, I put them everywhere, and considering their lore, I just know these things can stand up on their own. This character had crust pants before crust pants were even a thing. I'm still unsure on if in my lore they would live alone, or if there's like a pack of these creatures running around the river. I can picture there being a family dynamic there, and maybe the reason their ears are so roughed up is because tussles with their siblings. Also semi-unrelated, but I was playing with the Sims 4 Werewolves pack recently, and it's all coming around full circle for me. Also taking me back to those old Tumblr posts of, are you a vampire girl or a werewolf girl? And take a guess as to which boat I was in every single time. This is just a quick note from Editing Jay, but it's like actually killing me while I'm cutting the footage for this video. I don't know why I have such an issue leaving my mic alone and not making unnecessary noise, but I obviously I can't stop myself. So sorry for any of the weird random noises that are in this video. Now, when it came to the shirt, it was pretty one-to-one. The reference photo had it sort of widened at the top and off the shoulder, so that's what I did. And I also added those bracelets we got for accessories. I nixed the sweater from the reference though. I thought them not having one was more in character for who we were creating so far. I think it would hinder them while running through the forest or climbing things if need be. I also wanted to show off the tufts of hair on their body, which I really liked and thought made them look more hybrid and less human-like, which was my main goal. I did base the clothing colors off the reference photos, but I didn't make myself keep them exactly the same. It wasn't like a rule that I gave myself, just because I did want to end up with a more cohesive design in the end, and just copying things down isn't the most fun, but the shape is there in terms of the photos we used. I played around with them a little bit. Most of the colors ended up being pretty foresty, but I did attempt to make them look a little mismatched or like they didn't fit quite right, and purposely made them look a little worn out. We had the green light to make the shirt a graphic tee, so I went onto Canva and got a logo for Manistee River, since that's where I picture this character residing for the most part. I had the idea that maybe they pick up most of their wardrobe by stealing from campsites or taking what people have accidentally left in the woods. And this quickly morphed into me trying my hand at drawing tie-dye for the shirt they were wearing. Kind of muddy and homemade, like a summer camp goer near the river left behind a shirt and our character eventually picked it up. It was fun to imagine the whole cryptid aspect again, this scary dogman folklore character that people fear, but it's actually just some teen wolf archetype who likes to tussle with their siblings and steals clothes they like just to mess with people. I was really happy with what the character was looking like at this point. They felt like mine and not just a copy and paste Pinterest design, even though that's what they are, which is ultimately what the challenge was, but I ended up just indulging my brain and had fun thinking about who the character was beyond that. I added a few more details, made sure that there was no silver in sight on any of the accessories, and their outfit and the added on lore was done. Okay, if you remember at the beginning when we were picking out what our Pinterest photos would be, we got this tattoo that was just some coordinates. Now it's time to incorporate that into our design. And after all the character fleshing out and a little extra research, it ended up working out perfectly. I just wrote out what the chords of the Manistee River were, and I decided to put them on our character's ribs. All the little details ended up working out so perfectly. I was kind of scared for this video because our options felt so limited and random at first, but this really just tied everything together for me. At the start, I wish we had gotten something a little bigger or the chance to add more tattoos, but I think the chords suit them perfectly, and realistically, I don't think this character would have the chance to be exactly tatted up, so I think it worked out great, and we successfully used and incorporated and stuck to all of the pins that we picked out. Okay, this last part was more just a treat for myself, but I decided I wanted to draw what our character's creature or cryptid form might actually look like when they're fully transformed. I felt like it would finish off the character a little bit and be a good place to leave off and still feel like we had a fully designed character. I looked up a bunch of references on what the Michigan and Dogman and other werewolf varieties looked like. I don't draw unnatural or mythical creatures a lot, so it was fun to just let myself play around and make the anatomy work without any preset rules in my head. And I think it actually ended up looking really cool. I was happy with it. They're probably a little taller in this form, but I still imagine them as not fully grown, still in that teen phase of werewolf life. Also, they've been unnamed this entire video, and they still are. So if you guys have any name suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I thought it might be fun to leave in all of your hands. I don't make characters that aren't related to my comic that often, so I didn't feel the pressure of coming up with a name by myself this time. I finished off the sketch with some little scribbles that look like a moon and stars. I went with the idea that maybe someone saw our character out by the lake one night while in this form and sketched it up to use as like a recorded cryptid sighting. After this and everything else was done and on the canvas, I just made a quick little character sheet. I went with the real life sketch thing and made the background of the cryptid form look like it was on paper, then just added a background for the rest of the drawings. And this was our finished Pinterest inspired character. I am actually beyond happy with how they turned out. I thought it was going to end up being really restrictive, but after all the designing outside of the pins we chose, it feels like I have a genuine fleshed out character. And in my personal opinion, we stayed within the rules greatly. So this video was so much fun and genuinely a pretty productive experience in terms of making this character something real. I would highly suggest trying it if it feels like something that might be fun to you. Thank you so much for watching if you did, especially if you're still here. Drink some water if you haven't during this entire video, and I will see you next time. Bye!